film opened this past week in New York and Washington, and July 30th it opens in Los Angeles, called Countdown to Zero, and it brings home the threat and calls for the abolition of nuclear weapons. Some of the questions that we face at this time is, how big a threat is North Korea? Will Iran go nuclear? Will Israel attack Iran? Are nukes safe in Pakistan? Are they safe in the former Soviet Union? And will Obama move seriously toward disarmament? The globalization of the 21st century has produced positive and peaceful exchanges between peoples and nations, but it has also witnessed the dawn of the age of global terrorism. And today, an accidental nuclear attack or terrorists acquiring nuclear materials and using them are all too real possibilities. Countdown to Zero traces the history of the atomic bomb from its origins to the present state of global affairs. 9 nations possess nuclear weapons capabilities, with others racing to join them, with the world held in a delicate balance that could be shattered by an act of terrorism, failed diplomacy, or a simple accident. And the film tells a number of incidents in the past where that simple accident almost happened. Written and directed by documentarian Lucy Walker, who did Devil's Playground and Blind Sight, the film features an array of important international statesmen, including Jimmy Carter, Mikhail Gorbachev, Pervez Musharraf, Tony Blair. And the film makes a compelling case for worldwide nuclear disarmament down to zero. The film was produced by Academy Award winner 2009 nominee Lawrence Bender, who did An Inconvenient Truth, Inglourious Bastards, and I think all of Tarantino's other films. And it was developed, financed, and executive produced by Participant Media, together with the World Security Institute. Now, I want to put one thing out there to my audience. I've been producing this show myself for over a decade. I'm starting work on a book, and I'm going to need a producer to work with me on the show. Spread the word, and anyone who has the experience and a passion for the kind of interviews and outlook that we offer on Freeform, email me at TEMcNally, TEMCNALLY, at mac.com, TEMcNally at mac.com. The job is, of course, pro bono. Valerie Plame Wilson, the former CIA covert operations officer, holds a bachelor's degree from Pennsylvania State University, a master's degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the College of Europe in Bruges, Belgium. Her career in the CIA included assignments in counter-proliferation operations, working to ensure that enemies of the United States could not threaten America with weapons of mass destruction. She's the author of Fair Game, My Life as a Spy, My Betrayal by the White House. She and her husband, Ambassador Joseph Wilson, are the parents of 7-year-old twins and live in Santa Fe. Welcome, Valerie Plame.
Thank you so much for having me.
I like listeners to get a feel for the people behind the ideas and the work that we talk about. Now, in your case, I don't know how much you can tell me, but can you briefly tell us a bit about the path to what you're doing today?
Sure. The media, I would say, knows me because of the betrayal of my covert CIA identity, and that caused a huge media storm that somehow we lived through. And we have remade our lives. We moved from Washington, D.C. We now live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And about 18 months ago, I was contacted by Lawrence Bender and Participant Media, and they asked me if I would be willing to do some interviews for this film. Now, of course, I knew they were serious, and they had done an amazing job with An Inconvenient Truth. So I said yes right away, and I was absolutely delighted because it has allowed me to apply the expertise which I garnered at the CIA, at this nexus of terrorism and nuclear weapons, something I care passionately about, and apply it on something that is really meaningful and doesn't have all that partisan background static.
Yeah.
So it's been a very good experience, and the film is really powerful and compelling, and it is a wake-up call, something that it's a topic that really hasn't been, frankly, fashionable to talk about since the close of the Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed Joe Cirincione of Plowshares Fund, Bruce Blair of the World Security Institute, both who are, well, Bruce Blair's an executive producer. Both of them are interviewed, Joe, quite a bit in the film. And every time I say, you know, when I was growing up, it was the threat. Nuclear war was the threat. It was the thing which, if you read sociology books at the time, psychology books at the time, they'll talk about how everyone was afraid and everyone was, you know, a bit depressed almost by the threat.
Queen Noor, who has been very involved and acted as a consultant on the film and has been such a strong advocate for Global Zero, in her public comments, has spoken about as a little girl remembering the whole duck and cover exercises, as though wooden desks would be really helpful. Yeah. But that there was that permeating fear of a nuclear holocaust. I think what happened at the close of the Cold War, we had a collective sigh of relief and tucked it under the carpet and moved on. And there, much to my surprise, there are college students alive today that were not even born when the Berlin Wall fell. So they do not have this in their frame of reference. And frankly, the international community has abdicated its responsibility over the last 2 decades to continue to speak about and move toward continual reductions in our nuclear arsenals.
And I imagine you'd agree that, in fact, the threat is worse now. That whole theory of mutual assured destruction between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, there were the dust-ups like the Cuban Missile Crisis, but basically they were equal rivals. They both were nation states, and there was a balancing act.
The truth is that the possibility of the United States and Russia going to war now is nil. And that paradigm that works so well for us, MAD, I love that acronym, mutually assured destruction, which did, in fact, act as a very strong deterrent for the decades of the Cold War, is no longer operative. The world has changed. And what has changed is the significant terrorist threat of terrorists getting hold of nuclear technology and weapons. We know certainly they have the will. And we know prior to 9/11, Osama bin Laden and his deputy al-Zawahiri were actively seeking nuclear weapons and technology. So that is what has changed. So ironically, we're in a position now whereby the nations that are nuclear declared nations have this technology are in fact in a weaker position because of it, because of the proliferation. And that is why Countdown to Zero, I think, does such an amazing job of pointing out what I think is the obvious. The only way to move ahead is to have your ultimate objective zero.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought it was almost a bit ironic that your whole sensational adventure with the Bush administration and the media and so on came about because the Niger yellow cake was a forgery. But the film points out that the deeper truth was that Al-Qaeda was not in that case, but was trying actively to obtain them and probably still are.
Indeed. I've never actually called that whole episode an adventure, but I'll file that away. Yes, the Bush administration's central point for going to war with Iraq was the so-called imminent nuclear threat. We didn't want to see the smoking gun in the shape of the mushroom cloud. And it turned out that wasn't really accurate. But that does not in any way detract from the real threat that the terrorists, whether Al-Qaeda or others, have in fact sought this technology for their own nihilistic agendas.
Right. I'm Terrence McNally, and that's the voice of Valerie Plame, the CIA operative, former CIA operative, outed by members of the Bush administration, among them Scooter Libby and Assistant Dick Cheney. Her work at the time and for her career in the CIA was in non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, and she's featured in the new documentary Countdown to Zero, which is playing in New York and Washington and opens in L.A. July 30th. It's a very powerful film made by the same production company and producer who made An Inconvenient Truth, and in a way, this is an even more inconvenient one, I would say, at this moment. And you can learn more at 2 different websites. One is globalzero.org, globalzero, one word, .org, or takepart.com/countdown to zero, one word. In the second half, I'm going to be joined by Tad Daly. He's the author of a new book called Apocalypse Never, Forging the Path to a Nuclear Weapon-Free World. The point that terrorists would love to obtain nuclear weapons, the other piece that goes along with that is that the possibility, it seems to me, is richest in the former Soviet Union. Could you speak about that?
Yes, the film makes a point of, in addition to the terrorist threat, you have the possibilities of madness, miscalculation, accidental. And in fact, there are a couple episodes in the early 60s where nuclear weapons were accidentally dropped off of airplanes over the Carolinas. I had no idea.
Yeah, and an airplane that crashed.
Indeed. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, more recent history, in just 2007, the B-52 bomber that flew over half the country with nuclear-tipped arsenal missiles, and neither the ground crew nor the flight crew knew, which I find just horrifying. But yes, the places where much, not all, but much of the smuggling has taken place is in the former Soviet republics, because as one expert says in the film, potatoes are guarded better.
Right. Let me just say that you show in the film folks who have actually smuggled.
Oh, yeah.
They got caught. It turns out 3 or 4. But this, to me, those moments where we see this like
2-bit little.
Yeah, like a guy
He was a car thief, for crying out loud, and he had access to this highly enriched uranium because it was in a shed where he just, like a gardening shed. He just had to break the lock. And he sold this. Why? Because he wanted money to buy a refrigerator. And he sold it to what he thought was an Al-Qaeda operative. Thank goodness for us, he, in fact, was a very sharp cop from Georgia.
Georgia of
the former Soviet Union.
That Georgia,
indeed.
yes.
Yeah, that one, yes. Not Atlanta. And what you see is that protocols and the monitoring, the verification process of this highly enriched uranium or plutonium, those are the two fissile materials used in nuclear weapons, is sadly lacking. The film shows very graphically. It's well done. I know entertaining is kind of a funny word to use.
Compelling, sort of.
Yeah, but to show that 100 pounds of highly enriched uranium will fit into a shoebox, and 100,000 shipping containers come into the United States every day. So the possibility, I don't know what the odds are, but I don't like them.
And one of the things that we've talked about since 9/11 is the fact that that's one of the real holes in our security.
Indeed.
I mean, Grandma has to take off her shoes when she's heading to Vegas.
Yeah.
But 100,000 containers come in per day.
Per day.
Yeah. And that it seemed that with lead casing or something, it's pretty easy, even if checked, it could be missed.
As the movie shows, it's not just lead casing. It's not even that hard. Kitty litter can be used because kitty litter is naturally, there's a very low level of radioactivity, so therefore it can set off some of the few sensors that we do have. And who's going to dig through a pile of kitty litter? Hello. So I mean, this is all really gloomy, but the filmmakers did not want to scare folks into inaction.
Right.
They want to serve as a wake-up call. They want people to go see this movie, talk about it, as what happened with An Inconvenient Truth. I mean, who really talked about global warming in any substantive way prior to that movie? We hope that this has an even stronger effect, because, as dismaying as this all is, I would not be involved if I wasn't, at the end of the day, optimistic that we can, in fact, step off this path. The film shows South Africa, a country that had nuclear weapons program, and they turned away from it. They said, we just don't want to continue to do this. I mean, it is possible.
Libya.
Libya was caught red-handed, and they really had no choice.
But wait, North Korea's been caught red-handed. And they act as if they have a choice.
That is true. The point is that the Global Zero has laid out an incredibly detailed, well-orchestrated plan to get to Global Zero. It will call for very strong monitoring, verification, very intrusive inspections. You build a very strong international consensus.
One irony I want to point out was that, because I think things have improved on this end, while the Bush administration made so much of the yellow cake forgery, they were falling down on the getting the stuff out of Eastern Europe. Am I correct? Out of the former Soviet Union, and that has picked up.
Well, there's a whole nuclear threat initiative that has put protocols in place and spent millions of dollars cleaning up and securing those stockpiles, but there's still much work to be done. The good news is that at the height of the Cold War in 1986, we had 70,000 nuclear weapons. We are now down to 23,000. The U.S. and Russia have about 96% of that. Presidents Obama and Medvedev signed the START treaty. It needs to be ratified, which is what your listeners can do if they go to globalzero.org. Urge your senator, petition him or her to ratify the START treaty. The other things they can do, at these websites, they can sign the Global Zero Declaration, find out where else this film is playing, and just educate themselves. I really genuinely believe that we are the greatest country in the world, and we have demonstrated through our leadership, we've really made huge leaps in what we can do, whether it was the Marshall Plan, whether it was securing civil rights for all our citizens, whether it was putting the first man on the moon. Here is our challenge for this century, to lay out to the rest of the international community, here is where we want to be. Let's move toward that. And that's, as I had alluded to earlier, I would not be involved in this if I didn't think that there was a decent chance of moving toward this in a significant, sincere way.
Mm-hmm. And let's just one more time, where we stand today. One of the things that shocked me was Gorbachev said over 40 countries have the capability to build nuclear weapons. I thought 9, 10, 11, 12. What was he referring to?
Well, there are 9 nuclear countries that are declared. He's referring to the fact that these are the countries that have the technology to do this. It is extremely expensive. The infrastructure is quite significant to build a nuclear weapon. Fortunately, since the dawn of the nuclear age, there has never been a nuclear program that has gone undetected by U.S. intelligence, just because the footprint is so big. But again, back to what we spoke to earlier, it's the proliferation of this technology. There's a scene in the film where then Senator Biden can't really quite believe that one can build a nuclear weapon with sort of off-the-shelf items. Right. So they go off and round up
challenges.
They find some grad students, and this is in fact a common in the physics program, a common sort of final exam, if you will, building a nuclear weapon, obviously without the fissile material. And so they did that in no time at all and brought it back into the Senate hearing room to show really how easily it can be done. The film in no way provides any sort of blueprint for those who might wish to put a couple wires together.
They have to get into college physics.
Well, it's really just scratches the surface. It's already out there. Yeah. But it shows how easily these materials can be obtained.
Mm-hmm. So that's why he says 40.
Yes.
In other words, if you've got a sophisticated technology program,
and the knowledge base, yes.
I mean, even to look at North Korea, which can do almost nothing else.
I know.
It can't feed its people. It can't.
That's why this calculus, and for countries, this is so expensive. They can't feed their own people, whether it's North Korea or Pakistan, India. They have trouble, literacy rates, health rates. You can imagine where these billions of dollars could be diverted into things to make the human race better rather than into nuclear weapons programs. In no way am I advocating a double standard. It's not. I'm saying zero across the board. It's not okay. It's not okay for the Judeo-Christian, Western-oriented countries to have nuclear weapons. No, this is not a double standard.
Right. One of the things I was going to say is that one of the articles of the non-proliferation treaty, in addition to new countries not adding to it, which is what we hold over Iran, but it was that those who did hold them were to eliminate them, and that was signed in '68, and we are now this many years later, and we've made
there are a lot of
steps.
I'm not an expert in this. I just do know that there are a lot of loopholes in the nuclear proliferation treaty that have been exploited to the utmost extent by many nations, Iran being one of them. But you cannot sit across from an Iranian and have a conversation that begins with, so tell me again why it's okay for the United States to have nuclear weapons and not other countries. That conversation is going to go nowhere.
Right. You have a quote from Ahmadinejad at one point. He says to the camera, if it's bad, why should you have it?
Yeah.
And
I love one of my favorite quotes about this whole issue comes from Albert Einstein, who in fact called the nuclear weapon his only mistake. But his quote was, "Nuclear weapons have changed everything except how we think about them."
Yeah.
We cannot comprehend what the detonation of a nuclear weapon would mean for us. We cannot begin to understand the destruction, and there is no turning back once we're there. So I think the plan is to try to do it before.
And so again, the purpose of Countdown to Zero, the reason you're traveling around doing these radio interviews, is that we tend to forget about it. We tend to focus on elections, economic crises, climate change, maybe starlets, distractions.
Yeah.
This doesn't
matters.
go away without us getting
this really
really
matters.
involved.
Please go see the film. It is so well done, and it will make you think. And
hopefully make you act.
And act as well, and we need more of that today.
Okay, so the two websites are globalzero.org, globalzero, one word.org, or takepart.com /countdown to zero. I've been speaking with Valerie Plame. She worked for years in the CIA against proliferation. And interestingly, I was thinking the irony is that the fact that you had the terrible experience you did makes you a visible spokesman and gives you this platform.
If there's any good that came out of that adventure, as you called it, it would be that I can use my voice for something that I think is really meaningful.
So continue the work you were doing in a totally different way you could have never predicted.
Unforeseen circumstances.
And Countdown to Zero is currently playing in New York and Washington. It opens in LA July 30th. Thank you, Valerie. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.